Welcome to GSCPA's Town Hall on Becoming a CPA in Georgia. I am Boyd Search, President and CEO of the Georgia Society of CPAs. I am joined by my colleague, Don Cook, our VP of Legislative Affairs. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It is good to be here. Thank you to everybody online out in virtual world for joining us today. There's obviously been a lot of changes when it comes to licensure, the rules, the regulations, so everything from statute, rules, regulations, and we're going to get into all of that. And we do have an agenda for you we'll go through in a little bit. But before we get to that, Don, why don't you walk through the housekeeping items for this afternoon?
So I'm, of course, in charge of housekeeping this morning, and so we're going to walk you through some quick things. First and foremost, checkpoints. So if you're taking CPE today, obviously those are going to be ultimately important, so pay attention to the checkpoints, check all of the appropriate boxes. From that point, we've got actually a Q&A box on the screen, so if you have questions throughout, we are going to be taking questions as we go, so feel free and write your question in the question box. And we'll get to those as we go along. Also important to note that all the boxes on your screen, they can be resized. So we've got a couple slides that we're going to show you that are actually Excel spreadsheets. And so the print can get a little small on there. So you can go ahead and stretch the boxes out, make them bigger, a little easier to read. I know the problems. I got my reading glasses just in case. So outside of that, we're looking forward to today and talking a lot about licensure and pathways. So.
Right on. So questions as we go, right?
That's right. Questions as we go.
I wanted to reiterate that. Yeah. So our agenda for the day, just sort of top line, if you will, we're going to talk a little bit about the Georgia Society and the Georgia State Board of Accountancy. We're going to briefly go through a list of some top professional issues that are out there. But we're going to spend most of our time on House Bill 148, changes to pathways and licensure, and all the things that go into that. We'll also hit the exam and the impact on that and stuff as well. So with that, let's keep marching forward. All right. Don, why don't you talk about the Georgia State Board of Accountancy and maybe some of the differences between the State Board and the Georgia Society?
Absolutely. I need to start this out by saying I asked Paul Ziga, who's the Executive Director, if he's going to be on the call today. He is not, so I can say whatever I want. Just kidding. But the Georgia State Board, that's right. Obviously, they are an integral partner with us in all the licensing conversations that we have statewide. But we do have two very different reasons for being here. The State Board of Accountancy, they are the regulator, the regulatory body. They are there to safeguard the public, residents of the state of Georgia, from CPAs who aren't doing the right thing. So they're there to safeguard the public, which is a big difference from the reason that we're here. I kind of, when I'm in a room full of college students, I refer to them as the policeman for the CPA profession. So they make sure that CPAs are stopping at all the appropriate stop signs. They're, hitting the gas pedal when the light turns green. So they're making sure that we are doing the correct thing as CPAs.
Right on. The Georgia Society of CPAs, we are the professional association. So you actually have to have your license and renew your license with the State Board, right?
Right.
But the Georgia Society it's a voluntary commitment. We have over 12,000 members. We are incredibly grateful for each and every one of you. But we are the professional association that focuses more on promulgating, protecting the profession. We do all that in the vein of the public trust, obviously, because that is bedrock to the profession. But we offer CPE, leadership opportunities, career building, networking, and obviously the most, I think, valuable thing that we provide in terms of public policy and legislative efforts and things like House Bill 148 that we're going to get into in a little bit. Just a little brief history on the Georgia Society. We've been around a very long time. It goes back to 1905, and you can see that brief history mapped up till 1959. We sort of stopped there. That is when we became a not staff driven, but we had our first full-time employee, we had an office and all these things, and we fast forward now to, well over 60 years later, and here we are with 12,000 members and 18 members of our team, and our office is here in Alpharetta. So we've come a long way, but we've been around a very long time, and our founding principles that are bedrock to the CPA profession are still what drive us. We do have a list of strategic principles that our board of directors, our governing council, and staff, when we're doing things, we look at these strategic principles and we ask ourselves, is what we're doing, does it meet these principles? Does it help deliver on their promise or their necessity? So we need to understand member needs, recruitment, being technology oriented, the legislative and regulatory presence, that's what we're spending a lot of time on today, opportunities for member engagement. I'll give you just a brief sample of that. Our accounting food fight, if you haven't participated in that, you should, but it gets the most member engagement. We have had years where we had over 8,000 of our members participate in the accounting food fight. That is a type of engagement that's just unheard of in the association world. And then obviously, pursuit of excellence. So those are our guiding strategic principles. Top professional issues. So I'm going to talk about the first few, and then we're going to flip it over to Don, but we're here to talk about pathways. We'll get to that. Deregulation. This is an issue that has been around for a long time. The idea of lowering regulatory environment around occupations and professions. We are seeing much more aggressive attempts at that. Florida and the Florida Institute, led by my counterpart Shelley Weir, are in the midst of a battle on a deregulation bill there as well. We have not seen much activity on that in Georgia, but is definitely on our radar and is top of our list. The future of CPE. Both AICPA and NASBA, as well as state societies around the country, are discussing CPE, the regulatory framework around it, the structure. Does it meet modern standards and modern needs? Do we need to make adjustments and changes to that? And I personally would suggest that we do need to make changes, not just in terms of moving the furniture around the room, if you will, but a wholesale design of the house that we're living in as it relates to CPE. So that is towards the top of our list. And then alternative practice structures. Private equity is obviously big in the public accounting world now. Those that are in industry, a large part of our membership also has private equity investment or is interfacing in some ways with private equity. And the alternative practice structures on the public accounting side that have come out of that are a significant conversation right now, particularly with NASBA, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. And our state board. Our state board has formed a task force on that issue just to look at it. There's no, I think, end to that in terms of like, here's what we want to get, but understanding it and understanding its impact on the public trust.
That's right.
So that is top of the list. Don, why don't you talk about conformity, tax on services, things like that?
Yeah, so licensure, as Boyd mentioned earlier, that's obviously a big thing that we pay attention to at the State House. But then once you segue out of the licensure, just by the nature of CPAs and what a significant percentage of CPAs do work in is the tax arena, we do wind up paying a lot of attention to tax bills as they flow through the State House, which really brings up the next two bullet points. So the conformity bill is what conforms state tax law to any changes that have taken place federally in the previous year. So obviously CPAs working with clients right now, you're working on 2025 tax year, which is also what the state is working on conforming to. So if there are big changes federally, then we're all waiting with bated breath trying to figure out what the state's going to do, which pieces they're going to conform to and which pieces they're not going to conform to, which is where we are right now. Obviously, with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, there are a lot of conversations happening at the State House. There is definitely some uncertainty, and right now we're just measuring all that, paying attention, and communicating with our members as we know things. And tax on services, we are always looking out, especially as tax reform bills and policy conversations happen. Anytime the state looks at reforming our tax policy any way, shape, or form, especially if they're going to reduce tax in some section of that, generally speaking, they're going to raise it somewhere else. So if you reduce it here, you got to make up for those revenues somewhere else. And a tax on services is definitely an area where the state has openly discussed as a potential revenue earner. So we're always keeping our ears to the railroad tracks on that one. That being said, CPA Day at the Gold Dome is a huge advocacy opportunity for us. It's a great opportunity for us to be down there at the State House, bring our members in, and look at this crowd that was down there this year. I mean, we had 132, I think, registered and show up in person at the State House. I think the bulk of those people made it across the street as well for photo ops with their legislators and have conversations with senators at the ropes or House members at the ropes. And all those are super important. I think for us, the most important thing, though, is afterwards hearing from elected officials that they saw CPAs down there from their name tags. So hey, Don, I saw you guys had so much turnout this year. It was great. Great to see that many CPAs down here, and we without a doubt heard that from legislators.
It was a great time.
Yeah, it was a great time.
And if you've heard me speak about it before, the bacon,
right,
the freight depots.
It's amazing. That's right. The breakfast. Really
good.
Yeah. Although
free breakfast.
You and I rarely eat it because we don't have time. But it smelled amazing.
But if anything, come get a free breakfast and hang out with some friends. Right?
That's right. Totally.
So. All right. Let's spend some time talking about the exam. Now I'm going to throw Don a little bit for a curveball because the next slide I'm going to skip over and we're going to come back to.
Okay.
So I just want to give a little bit of a history on the exam. So here, let's go here. So remember, I mean, depending on your age and when you got licensed, it might have been 2.5 days in person, right, with 1,000 of your best friends and in a room and having to take it all at once, to then it became 2 days, right? And we have evolved it all the way where now you go to a Prometric site, you can take each section of the exam one at a time. And in January 2024, we launched the initiative led by AICPA and NASBA, CPA Evolution, which restructured the exam. I do want to very quickly say that, we are not at the end of this. I don't think we're ever at the end of the exam because it's constantly evolving. But I do need to give a tip of the cap to our friends at the AICPA and Mike Decker and his team. I think they've done a fabulous job, both engineering and ramping up, launching the exam, making adjustments, being very public about things that they know didn't quite fire right and they're going to change and things like that. So I think it's gone incredibly well from my perspective. The massive changes that were undertaken, as you can see here, we still have 3 core parts, right, that everybody has to take. And then there's this sort of choose your own adventure at the end. You can take business analysis, or you can take information systems, or tax compliance and planning. And remember, at the end of the day, whether you've done any of those 3, CPA equals CPA. So it's been interesting to see and hear from students and recent graduates as they go through the new exam and the feedback on that. Here's a little just different graphic that the AICPA has provided of you've got the core disciplines, right? And then again, this choose your own adventure. And you can take these in any order you want. There's,
right.
You don't have to take the core and then the choose your own adventure.
Fascinating hearing from students on the different strategies they have on when to take which one and when not to. So,
yep. Yeah, we've talked to students about, hey, if you're a fast starter, maybe figure out which part is going to be the hardest for you,
right,
and tackle that first, because you don't want to do the easy ones and then when you're towards the end you're not getting through the hard thing, right? Some people might be fast finishers or strong finishers as opposed to at the beginning of the race, if you will. So a lot of strategies could be deployed throughout that. Okay, so now that we know we've got this new exam, House Bill 148 in sort of an unrelated way has changed the requirement. And we'll get to the window. My clicker is here. Let's talk about the new qualifications to sit for the exam.
Yeah, so which is what has changed, right? So part of House Bill 148, obviously we outlined a lot of different things in there, but changing the requirements to licensure, specifically the education requirements, is a big part of that. Before House Bill 148, so last year, which was not too long ago, the requirement was 20 hours in upper level accounting courses. It's 20 semester hours in upper level accounting plus a 4-year degree at a 4-year accredited institution. So those 2 things had to happen before you could sit for the exam. So obviously at that point you're going to be either in your 150, the tail end of your 150, or in your graduate program before you could sit. So we shifted, the state board and state society. We had a lot of conversations about this, and we felt pretty strongly about shifting those hours to allow students to shift if they feel comfortable doing so and feel qualified to do so earlier in their education cycle. So no longer is a 4-year degree required. However, you do have to have 24 hours in accounting hours and semester hours and coursework No longer is it upper level accounting though. So it's 24 hours in accounting period. So it's inclusive of your first two introductory courses. And then in addition to that, you don't have to actually be a graduate from a four-year institution. So
and that's to sit for the exam, not become licensed.
Correct.
Just
to sit.
So if I'm a student,
right.
I've taken some of my accounting classes at a technical college or a two-year school. This sort of references that those credits need to be earned at an institution that awards a bachelor's degree. How do I go about solving that conundrum? What happens? What can happen?
As long as those credit hours transfer to the 4 years school, it's going to work. So the important part is making sure that those credits transfer. There is some good news from our governor's office this year. He came out earlier this month or last month in January and said that he wants to make that process of transferring credit hours from a 2-year school to a 4-year school here in Georgia, specifically for accounting, much easier. So I look forward to seeing more on that in the months ahead, but without a doubt, it's going to be an easier process.
I'm excited for that initiative from Governor Kemp's office. I think it's going to
help out.
Yeah, it's going to pay dividends.
Right.
All right. So sticking with the exam, I want to talk about the exam window. So remember back when, if you were one of the 2 days on paper, all the sections at the same time, you had to pass 2 sections and had to get a 50 or better on 2 other sections to retain credit, right? And with the evolution of the digital exam, not CPA evolution, but and taking it at a prometric, that changed. There's a window that used to be 18 months. So I pass a part of the exam. I then have 18 months to pass the other 3 parts before I would lose credit for that one part. And each of those parts you're passing has its own 18-month clock. But that 18-month has changed. It is now 30 months in Georgia. It's 30 months in most states. There's a very long and involved story around the national conversation that happened around changing the window. There were some advocates that felt like it should be 18 months. Hey, these kids need, prompted to get this stuff done, and if we extend it, they're just going to take longer to do it, kind of thing. And others who were like, hey, pandemics happen, life happens, maybe there should be no window at all. And there was, long story short, there were a number of organizations that were lobbying for a 24-month window. There were a number of organizations lobbying for a 36-month window. The Georgia Society was one of those. We officially advocated for a 36-month window, and sort of at the end of the day, more nuanced and complicated than this, but there was sort of a grand compromise, if you will, and we landed on 30 months. Now, so here's what's important to understand. In Georgia, the window on the exam, so if you're applying to take the exam in Georgia, it is 30 months. It is 30 months in most states. There are some states who plan to change it to 30 months but haven't been able to yet. Some had already changed to 24. Some were talking about adopting 36. It's a very small handful of those differences. But if you know people or have people that are applying in a state other than Georgia, just make sure they understand the window that exists in that state, right? Because you don't want them to think it's 30 months and then it turns out it's 18 months because it hasn't changed yet and get caught up in that. And quite honestly, I know some students for a while were kind of shopping where they might take it based on that.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that's really happening anymore, but okay. I'm going to pause just for a moment. We're good on questions. Okay, right on. So let's talk about pathways to licensure. The big deal, right?
House Bill
148. I think Don and I could spend hours talking about the long story behind this. I think from an outsider's perspective, I know certainly from some of our members, it happened quite fast and furious last year, particularly in the fall of 2024 and then going into the 2025 legislative session. I know if you ask our past chair, Catherine Fletcher, we kind of went from, hey, we're watching, we're studying, we're talking to our members, to boom, we're going to do this. The conversation around what became House Bill 148 happened over a period of many years. For everything from man on the street conversations around 150 and is it living up to its promise, and there were opinions all over the place on that, right, to this convergence of political, social, cultural, and economic issues around licensure and professional licensure and access to education and things like that. So The conversation was always sort of framed as pipeline, like we need to get more people in the profession. I think we're referring to that now as workforce. Friends at the AICPA have asked us to do that. So a workforce challenge, right? We never went out of our way to sell it as a solution to pipeline or workforce issues, because there's so many more nuanced reasons as to why this gained immediate popularity and support from our membership, from academic institutions, and at the State House. I don't want to steal your thunder, but
Yeah.
can I talk about the pathway through the State House?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So legislation, getting it passed isn't always easy, right? It requires a lot of people doing a lot of different things and hopefully getting a lot of things right. And I think we did that. Are we going to figure out where maybe we got something wrong in statute or rule? And I want to come back to that notion, by the way, statute and rule. But there's no doubt at some point we'll be like, oh, that was an unintended consequence. We'll have to fix this. But we got clarity pretty quickly. And at the State House, our story, I think, was so compelling. It went through, and correct any of this that I get wrong, it went through House subcommittee unanimously. It went through House committee unanimously to the House floor, where it was unanimous, right?
Yep.
Over to the Senate, where they skipped subcommittee, I think, right?
Right.
Then Senate committee, and it was
Unanimous.
to Senate rules, right, where it was unanimous. To the Senate floor, I think you guys are getting the thing right here. Do we need to say
Unanimous.
Senate floor unanimous one more
Yeah.
time, right? And then eventually to Governor Kemp's desk, where he did sign it.
Right.
It is not unheard of for a bill to do that, but it is incredibly rare, right? And I think so many people from so many different constituencies saw the opportunity in this, as well as the solutions it would provide for a lot of things, right? Access while still maintaining high standards for a learned and high profession. Can you I want to pause for a minute and have you talk about statute and rule and what we're talking about today, because we're going to get to some of the rule stuff. And in fact, the credit hours to sit for the exam was a rule, not statute, right? So talk about how this is statute and that's rule and the difference.
The way I look at it, so statute is a little bit like bylaws for an organization. You want to keep them fairly high level, so you don't want to have them be too specific. The specifics are left to operating manuals or policy manuals within an organization, and so for a state, that's left to the regulations that govern that entity. In this case, a State Board of Accountancy. So the statute changes again high level, and then when you drill into the details, it's going to be in the regulations that kind of explain and give all the words behind the statute changes. And that's what happened in this case.
And so the process, we sort of already explained the process for statute. It's got to go through House and Senate and signed by the governor. And a rule, the State Board can't just do it, right?
They can't. And so a rule is a little bit easier than statute change. It takes about the same amount of time, but you don't have to get as many people to buy into it. But for a rule change, basically the process is, obviously the board has to sit down, they have to go through the rule changes, go through the verbiage, they all have to agree on it. Then it goes to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General, that is the attorney for our board, they have to also bless the language because they're the lawyer in the room. So once they bless the language, it then is posted by the Secretary of State's office. They post it for public comment. It's open for a period of 30 days. And then once it gets through that period of public comment, it goes to the governor's office for the governor and his staff to look through the document to make sure they agree with the rules. So it's not as simple as, hey, we're going to change a rule and vote on it and make it happen. So it does have all these, kind of processes, steps, and hurdles it has to go through.
And I think that's important. It provides a check and a balance on it, right?
1,000%,
The board, who is, our state board is full of wonderful people, right? 7 members of our state board, 6 CPAs, the public member, Paul Ziga, executive director, and his team. But that checks and balance in that process, I think, is important.
It is very important, yes. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk, Don, about what House Bill 148 did and the different pathways. Trust me, if we were in a room, I would ask, who did it through a bachelor's degree, and a certain age range would raise
Right.
their hand who did
Yep.
it through 150 and raise their hand, and everybody would think, well, my way was better. And anyway, but point is, we have an enormous number of people that were licensed in different ways through different requirements. But
Right.
where were we, and what did House Bill 148 do?
And I saw we have a question
Oh, we
pop
do.
up, but
Yeah.
let's get to this after we talk through this slide, because I think it'll make more sense for everybody once we review the slide real fast. So the current pathway that we've had here in Georgia since 1998, because as we talk about pathways, we talk about that flip to 150, which happened here in Georgia again, 98, happened first in Florida in 1983. So they were the first ones to achieve that.
That's right.
So it definitely a period of time, obviously, before when it happened in Florida, before it happened here in Georgia and other states around the country. So 150 we've had in place now for 27 years. It's very simple. 150 hours, 1 year work experience, CPA exam. That makes a CPA. Congratulations. That path is still in place, which is good for those students that are out there thinking they wanted to pursue that path. They're in the middle of pursuing 150. We didn't want to pull that rug out from underneath and want to make sure that pathway was still in place for them.
And I want to jump in with
Yeah.
that real quick, because some people will say, well, we have this master's pathway outlined. Why keep 150? And a perfect example of that is if you're going to UGA
Right.
and you get the double dog in accounting and finance, then you're going to get to 150 hours, but you're not going to have a
Absolutely.
master's degree.
Right.
But you're going to have dual bachelor's degrees. Right?
Exactly.
And that was sort of our reason for keeping that. In fact, I need to point out, when we set out on this, I was sort of on a mission to eliminate 150 from our statute, and smarter people than me helped me see the light on that. I'll give credit to you, Don, and I'll give credit to my counterpart, Rebecca, in
Right.
Maryland, for
Yeah.
helping me see the light on that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. So 150, very important that it's still in place. Pathway 2 is the bachelor's degree. We say in accounting, I will explain this as we talk about the rules. It's not really a bachelor's degree in accounting. You can actually have a bachelor's degree in anything as long as you get the appropriate amount of accounting coursework. 2 years experience, pass the CPA exam. Same for path 3. It's a master's degree pathway. Does not have to be specific to accounting as long as you get the appropriate coursework. 1 year of work experience, pass a CPA exam. And so those 3 pathways, it broadens the field, and makes it a profession that's much more available to students out there.
And it's important to point out that if they get all the coursework, they've likely earned enough hours to get a bachelor's degree in accounting.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yep. Okay. The question we have is, is you ready to
Yeah,
go
let's
to the
do it.
question?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. With the new pathways and credit hour requirement, changes to sit for the exam, do you foresee colleges and universities adjusting their curriculum to better align?
It's a fantastic question, and we've had a lot of conversations with educators this year. My feeling, and you can agree with this or not, is that they are adjusting curriculum. It's going to take time, though.
It is going to absolutely take time.
Right.
I think a lot of universities, the smart ones, are seeing the great opportunity in this, particularly in that master's program, and creating value and creating distinction between somebody graduating with a master's. So they see the opportunity in that. We've got record enrollments right now.
We do, right.
I don't want to tie that at all to House Bill 148 because it's so new. The record enrollments in undergraduate and at several master's programs in Georgia, I think, is entirely attributable to the work that is actually already has been going on at our universities and colleges, and our teams of professors there. So, yeah, I do think they will, and it's been happening and already happening as we were leading up to it.
Right.
Okay, we do have another question. Will my internship count?
Will my internship count as experience towards the license? And so, which is where I'm guessing that question is coming from.
Could also be credit hours, because they get credit hours for internships.
The credit hours, as long as their accounting programs giving them credit hours, it should count, yes.
Yep. Okay.
If it's the experience hours, it will not count as experience hours now.
Right on.
So,
all right. We good on questions? Oh, we got another one coming in hot.
almost.
Yep, we've seen that one. All right, let's keep moving on, and we'll
Yeah.
come back when it pops up. So let's talk about this map. So you're going to see a couple of maps and lists today, and we need to,
Real fast.
all right, real fast. Go ahead.
Does passing a CPA exam ever expire if you are not currently a CPA? So it's fascinating. I had this conversation with somebody this morning, and it's not a new conversation. The answer is no. So if you pass all 4 parts of the CPA exam within the window that we talked about earlier, then the fact that you pass those 4 parts in Georgia does not ever expire. This is not the case from state to state. So this is where we have to make sure that we're paying attention to state laws. Being a CPA, the CPA is a state license, and so not everything is going to be identical. So just make sure that you understand what your state does and how they conduct things, and if you have a question, ask. But we've had a case, and I'll tell a quick story here, where there's a CPA in South Georgia. She passed her exam, if I remember right, back in 1991, and just because of life, never got back to becoming a CPA. Well, she had worked for a CPA firm for decades afterwards, and then all of a sudden realized, hey, I could be a CPA. And didn't realize it, didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I am now, and I want to be a CPA. And so the connections were made. We talked to NASBA, had everything done appropriately, and she's now a CPA, even though she passed the exam about 30 years ago. So it does happen, right?
So we got another question. In terms of the work experience, must it be spent working under a current CPA? For example, could I start my own tax practice and work in that for a year to meet the requirement?
That is a very good question, and
It's nuanced.
It is nuanced.
Because it's sort of black and white and sort of not. Right?
And I'm going to put my lobbyist hat on. I'm going to dance around it a little bit, but I'm also going to answer it. But basically, so the 3's obviously make a CPA. So education, exam, experience. The first 2 E's, education and exam, they're very black and white, right? Your education requirements are what they are. Your exam requirements is what it is. You're either going to pass it or fail it. But the experience requirement, there is some nuance to that. And I could definitely ask our state board for specifics on your specific situation for more details. Technically, I would guess that the answer would be no to that specific question, that working for yourself in your own practice is not going to give you the experience necessary to be a CPA. You're going to have to, at some point, come into contact with your work with a CPA who's willing to sign off on your experience.
And I think that was Don's best legislative 2-step.
That's right. Dance.
So I think the black and white is it probably not in that scenario.
Right.
But there is an appeals process. So we have had compelling stories.
We have,
where we've
for
had
sure.
people who have clearly had appropriate experience. Have the 3 E's. The experience was maybe not. It was not typical, or
Right.
it was atypical, and they took their case to the state board, and the state board reviews that, and can bless it. Right. So that's
right.
the nuance in it. But yeah, it's. I'm 2-stepping now.
Right. An example of that is, let's say you're a CFO, you don't work for a CPA because your CEO is not a CPA. So as a CFO, yes, you're doing a lot of the work that a CPA does, but you don't have anybody to sign off on your experience. So in that case, you could go to your public accounting firm that does your tax work and your public accounting work that does your audit work. Yep. And have them work with you to sign off on that requirement. So that's an example where, yes, the state board is willing to look at that kind of a situation to make it work.
Okay, another question. Will my 10 years working in accounting count as the 2 years of work experience? I think it's sort of the same answer.
Same answer. It would depend on whether your 10 years working in accounting had a CPA in some shape or form in that span of years.
And like you said, so it could be somebody that that is in the company that's
Right.
working with you, or somebody that's outside of it that is
Right.
interfacing with your work and willing to sign off on it. Again, I think it's nuanced, and that would be a story I'd want to.
Devil's in the details on
Yep.
both those, and I would definitely say reach out to us. I'm more than, my contact info is on the website, so reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to provide more details once you give me some more background on it.
And help them with the process of
Absolutely.
figuring that all out.
So typically,
yeah.
the work experience, the state board likes to see that it's the most recent 2-year period in this case. So you're basically just coming off of your 2 years work experience working underneath a CPA. That's in a perfect world.
All right. Miss Elizabeth, are we good to move forward? Right on. Okay. Let's so you're going to see a couple of maps, including this one, and a couple of lists. And we need to tip our cap to our friends at the Minnesota Society of CPAs. These are active maps, if you will, that they are updating, I think, pretty regularly.
Especially last year, right?
Yeah. Last year. So this is to illustrate when we decided to pursue House Bill 148, we went from sort of thinking we might be second wave in an initiative like that to deciding we wanted to very much be out front.
Right.
Ohio was the first to pass in their new pathways bill, which were very similar, in December of 2024. Then a couple of others came, and we like to say that we were first 5 in that. But there's no question that this is. It could create disruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a mobility perspective and a reciprocal licensure perspective, we're going to dive into a lot of that. I think you and I, if we went back to fall 2024, when we said, "Yep, here we go," and we had our legislation written, we had it drafted by the attorneys and everything. We were like, we're going to do this. We would have thought in 2025, success would have been how many states passing pathways.
We had thought 10 to 15, and we had our own maps that we were coloring
And that was
all
like
the states.
pie in the sky. That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was like, this would be fantastic if we got 10 to 15.
And how many states have passed pathways?
25 states have passed pathways.
So here's the list.
Right.
With effective dates.
And this is one of those slides, back to the housekeeping, this is one of those slides that you can pinch and spread to see all these dates, just to take a look at it.
Yeah. And we can obviously provide, I think they have the slides.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah. But if there's anything in this presentation you guys want that you don't think you have access to, just let us know after, and we will get you what you need. All right. So the fact that we are at 25 that have passed it, I think just shows, right, how widely accepted this sort of solution to all of these different problems, cost and access, widening, entry points, if you will, recognizing all these social, cultural, and economic things that are going on, and political, right, and the need to solve those problems, not just pipeline. Right. And to be quite honest, the state societies, we worked across the country collaboratively, very, very closely, and a lot. We sat on a lot of weekly Zooms with my counterparts as we went about this. The Southeast states, particularly Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, we were in a constant string of communication with each other. Florida, as you can see, is still gray, but they introduced a bill last year. They had to sit on it. They have refiled it this year. They have every intent of going. And remember, Florida was the first to go to 150 back in 1983. And quite honestly, again, when I mentioned Shelley Weir, my counterpart earlier, when she called and said, "Hey, Boyd, we're going to do this." That was like a sonic boom that was heard around the country. Hey, if the original state around 150 sees this as the appropriate direction, it kind of gave a lot of license, right? So while they're gray, we're clearly a leader on this, if you will. Also, a tip of the cap to California, because they came out with some thought leadership on it pretty early out of their state board and the state society that really helped drive and lead the rest of the profession. Okay. So we've got our list, we've got the effective dates. make sure you're, paying attention to those effective dates because it will matter. We know, as an example, we had somebody file for, I believe, licensure the very tail end of December 2025. And of course, the old standard was in place. So
Right.
NASBA, who is the clearinghouse for that, very rightly, denied them because
Yep.
they didn't meet the standards. But 2 days later, they do. So if you're applying or you have people applying in some state other than Georgia, make sure you pay attention to these effective dates.
Absolutely, yeah, and
'Cause it
know
matters.
that we have through our state board, they and us both, we've checked with NASBA to make sure that they are actively, for Georgia CPAs and Georgia exam takers, they are taking the new rules and regulations on this. So if you've hit these new criteria, you are good to go in terms of applying through NASBA.
So we have this issue with mobility and reciprocity. We knew that House Bill 148 and adopting new pathways
Right.
would likely lead to some disruption, particularly in the mobility, also reciprocity, that the profession had long enjoyed, right? This sort of driver's license approach to it, that I'm licensed here, but I can go anywhere. That was a bit of a misnomer. It didn't exactly work that way, right? And we have established our mobility stuff to more evergreen it and open it up, and I know you're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Talk us through the difference between mobility and reciprocity, and then let's get into some of the
sure.
specifics on it.
Yeah, so I remember when I first started working here almost 22 years ago, I remember thinking through mobility, reciprocity, and I don't know why my head had such a hard time wrapping my brain around it, but it did. Anybody out there that's having the same struggle, I was there with you. But to explain it in layman's terms, the ability to have a mobile license is mobility. So that's not actually getting a license in another jurisdiction. That's just the ability to be mobile across state lines. As an example, it's an Oregon licensed CPA that is using mobility to practice with a client here in Georgia. So they're not actually getting that Georgia license. Now, if there is a reason, and we'll go through these reasons in a second, if there's a reason where you need an actual license, that's reciprocity. So reciprocity is reciprocating that license, using your Oregon license to get a Georgia license here in the state of Georgia. And so that's the differences between the two.
So let me ask you a question. Let's just say we have a CPA.
Right.
They live here in Atlanta, let's say.
Okay.
They're licensed in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And they work in Alabama, but they live here. Can they be in Georgia? Can they practice in Georgia through mobility, or do they have to reciprocate their license?
So if they live in Georgia,
Yep.
licensed in Georgia,
Yeah. Say they live in Columbus, Georgia.
Right.
But they work in Alabama and are
so
licensed in Alabama.
Alabama does have universal mobility, so they do allow for out-of-state CPAs to practice within the state, and so that would be completely acceptable with no issues.
But if you're living in Georgia and you want to work in Georgia, you have to.
You have to get a Georgia
You have
license.
to be
Right.
licensed in Georgia.
If you're going to hang your shingle up in the state of Georgia and you live here, without a doubt, you're going to have to be licensed in the state.
We do it based on residency. Is that?
It is a
that how we do
residency
that?
state.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about.
If I could
how to work.
expand on the mobility requirements. So as I mentioned before, so mobility is just having that mobile license that you can take from state to state.
Yeah.
As we talk about mobility in all the states, it's important to note that Georgia mobility laws only govern out-of-state CPA's ability to practice within the state and not the other way around. So it has no control over a Georgia CPA being able to practice somewhere else. To Boyd's example that he just shared on Alabama, we have to rely on Alabama legislation to actually have that impact on Georgia CPAs. One of the things I love about the legislation that we came up with on mobility laws here in the state is that we have made it very, very simple. And so as you're talking about, hey, we're going to let out-of-state CPAs practice in the state of Georgia, there are all kinds of opportunities to throw up all these borders and throw up all these lines in the sand in terms of you don't want CPAs that don't have this or don't have this. We made it very, very simple. And so if you are an out-of-state CPA and you have a active CPA license that's in good standing, and you pass the CPA exam to get that license, then you can practice here in the state of Georgia. And that's regardless of whether it's on the tax side or the audit side. And the audit side is new as of House Bill 148.
That's good stuff. That's good news,
It's
right?
fantastic news, yes.
It makes it more like a driver's license.
More like a driver's license, and it keeps it simple. And that's what I love about all of this around House Bill 148, is we went into it collectively trying to keep this as simple as possible.
Evergreen was a word we used a lot on this stuff, right?
Yes.
To certainly every time you open up or unzip legislation to redo stuff, so in our case, accountancy statute,
Right.
You run the risk of unintended consequences and stuff. So when we do it, we try and make it as evergreen as possible, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Are we good on this slide?
I think we are good on this slide, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to actually, I'm going to go back to just this bottom, the second bullet point on this one. This no notice, no fee, no escape. So the Oregon example you used is that the licensees living there, working there, but they're practicing some in Georgia because they have clients. Yeah, they don't have to tell us, they don't have to pay a fee, but they also can't escape our regulatory grip.
They can't. So in statute, we are very clear that if you are an out-of-state CPA practicing here in the state of Georgia, you have to be doing so under the license or under the law and the rules that we have created.
All right, we do have a question. If I move to Florida, do I need to change my Georgia CPA license to Florida? I don't know if they're residency or
So
office.
I would say check the rules, and I would also put it depends on that question. So it depends on if you're planning on holding yourself out as a CPA, because a lot of state laws require that if you're holding yourself out, i.e. hanging a shingle out, marketing yourself as a CPA, if you're going to put CPA in your bio on your website, CPA in your signature line on your email, and it's obviously that you're working at a Florida office, then yes, you're likely going to have to get a license, but you're going to have to check with your state requirements.
All right, and we can help. We're more than willing to help them do that.
Can you talk about firm mobility? So firm mobility is a part of that audit side that I mentioned, which was something that we were very intentional about including in House Bill 148. We felt like, again, like Boyd mentioned, that once we have unzipped legislation, let's try to clean it up as much as we possibly can so we don't have to do this again in the short term. And so we for a long time, we had tax mobility, which is referred to as individual mobility. Firm mobility is considered audit mobility. And the reason why is because we actually required that if you were going to do an audit here in the state of Georgia, that you had to have a firm license to do that audit. And to have a firm license, you obviously have to have an individual that's licensed in the firm. So it was just a little more onerous to practice in Georgia, especially on the audit side. And so we felt like, again, trying to keep things evergreen, keeping things simple, let's go ahead and clean this language up while we're at it.
Okay. Let's see. All right, so is that our mobility map?
That is, yes.
So we talked about disruption to mobility, individual mobility, which could come in time, particularly as people become licensed under a 4-year pathway, and there are states that don't have it, but this map is designed to give us some comfort on that, right?
Right, absolutely, yeah.
And we have a list of states that have this more evergreen mobility, if you will, and when it goes into effect.
And I will show you, back to this whole idea of statute changes versus regulation changes. Every state is different. And like we outlined the process here in Georgia, they both take about the same amount of time to get them passed. Some states are much more difficult to get regulations passed in statute, which I know makes no sense on the face of it, but that's why these adoption dates are so different. Is because every state does things just a little bit differently.
That's right. And I do want to, in the vein of another tip of the cap, there were 4 states that had this mobility, this sort of what I'll call better mobility, right? More evergreen and more open mobility in place. And for us, regionally matters. Alabama and North Carolina have had it in place. And as you can see, the rest of us are following their lead on that. So, all right. Requirements for initial licensure in Georgia.
So most of these requirements have not changed. The basic ones, baseline ones from how it was in statute previously. You got to be a U.S. citizen or qualified alien status, age of 18, good moral character, bachelor's degree or higher. Those are all the same. The differences are that so previously we required 30 hours in accounting above the introductory level. And so now it's just a 30 hours flat in accounting that includes those 2 introductory courses. In addition to that, 18 hours semester hours in general business subjects. Previously was 24. So all these things have come in line. It's very important to note that the education, those 2 bullets, that's in place for all 3 pathways. So that does not change. Again, the idea here is, let's keep this simple across the board. Let's come up with that baseline requirement for all potential CPAs out there, and let's make that baseline effective for all 3 pathways. Let's let educators do what they do best, right? And that's be educators.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So there is this bullet point again about the 4-year school. I just want to hit this point one more time. If I go to a technical school, community college, or whatever, and take those classes there, I would need to get those credit hours to transfer to a 4-year institution in order for them to qualify for this standard.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
Gotcha. Very good. All right.
Additionally, obviously, we got to pay attention to that 30-month exam window, and then the experience requirement, which is that 2,000 hours for 1 year. Obviously, that's 12 months, 2,000 hours. For the 2-year requirement, that's going to be 24 months and then 4,000 hours. As well.
Okay. Let's move on to requirements for renewal, which, I mean, Merry Christmas.
That's right.
Everybody just did December, or you should have. If you did not renew your license,
then please call me.
Please go do it. I do need to say this, that one of the most, they do everything through email for the most part now, until they're going to actually revoke it, suspend it, or whatever.
Right.
You need to make sure that your email system is accepting emails from the State Board of Accountancy.
Very true.
Like, the number one problem is that they send out these renewal notices and people don't get it because it goes into their junk or it gets blocked or whatever. So if you haven't renewed, you were supposed to.
Or read our current accounts magazine, shameless sales plug, because we always put an ad in there every year around renewal time, just to make sure. That's right, e-news. So we try to remind people as often as we possibly can.
We'd put it on billboards if it would help.
We would, for sure.
So let's talk about the requirements for renewal.
So requirements are pretty simple. Every 2 years you have to renew your license once you have it. Renewal fee is $100, so it's not a steep renewal fee at all. It's probably one of the lower fees in the country, so $50 a year basically. The CPE requirement, it's 80 hours every 2 years, so that's every reporting period. 20 hours at the minimum has to be taken per year in a calendar year. And then 4 hours of those have to be in ethics. And one of those 4 hours has to be in Georgia-specific ethics that's talking about Georgia statute, rules and regulations and policies.
So they do conduct audits on this. They
do.
said I think they're going to start May, first or second week of May? First week of May, I think?
Yeah, I think first week of May is what Paul
and they're going to do,
said,
this says 10%, but I think Paul said they're 12% is what they're targeting?
I think that's what, yeah.
And so early May, check your email, because you may be getting audited for CPE. What was the rule about, or not rule, but not 3 times in a row, or if you get it a third time in a row?
So we have it.
It's random. The CPE audits are random.
It is random. So I've heard from members that they have been tapped for audit 2 reporting periods in a row, and they always ask me, am I going to get tapped a third time? And so I asked, tongue in cheek, I asked our board about that, and I was assured that would never happen, and if it did, to let them know, they would make sure it doesn't happen.
Got it.
Okay. So yeah,
got you.
But it is random.
It is, and we have there's a reporting tool on our website that they can use. So if you take a class from us, it automatically winds up in this transcript. If you're taking classes from outside sources, you can add it to that transcript. You can upload the documents that support it. And then if they ever get audited, if they've done that work, all they have to do is go in and click a button that says, hey, it's okay for the state board to look at all this stuff, right?
It's easy.
Super easy tool.
And if you do it as you go, it's a lot easier. Just do it, throughout the year, upload your documentation. It makes it all very, very easy. I do want to go back real fast. There's a bullet point up there under the CPE requirements that you can carry over up to 15 hours of CPE, which a lot of people don't know. So if you get audited and you're like 5 credits shy, you can always go back to your last reporting period and try to carry over those 5 hours to make up your 80.
That's if you've gone over the 80?
That's if you've gone over.
You can't
right.
carry over hours that they already used in a prior
Correct.
report. Okay.
The caveat I will throw on that is if you do use carryover hours in an audit to make up your 80, then congratulations, you have now been audited for 2 reporting periods because they're going to audit your previous reporting period as well. So just throw that out there.
It's like a warning.
It is a warning, but also
It's an opportunity,
a potential
but it comes-
lifeline.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Got you.
Yep.
Okay. Great point. Okay, so we're near the end here. I can't let the opportunity go by. Listen, the CPA profession, the CPA community here in Georgia is so incredibly supportive of their communities,
Absolutely.
Of future talent. I mentioned the accounting food fight earlier. Big
Right.
deal for us. Our education foundation, by all standards, punches above its weight class. And, when you compare the size of the profession in Georgia to other states and the health of our foundation, it's exceptional, and the profession and our members have done exceptional work there. You can see these stats for 2025, almost $174,000 awarded. Here's the thing. If every one of our members just gave the $25 to the foundation that's on the dues checkoff, we could nearly double that number every year. And the number of students that would have a direct impact on, the impact that could have on the profession and the pipeline and best and brightest and all those things. So this is my shameless plug. It's your opportunity to give to the foundation, and every amount, whether $1 or $1,000, matters, and we thank you for your years of support on that.
Looks like we do have a question that came up too.
What advice would you give to students or career changers who have previously ruled out becoming a CPA under the old rules? So without a lot of forethought, my advice is I would pursue it.
Absolutely.
I mentioned to students the other day at our CPA day that the outsiders can see being a CPA or being an accountant in general or being a CPA is sort of like a bottleneck, right?
Right.
And it's actually the inverse of that. Once you understand the language of business and you understand how all these different parts work together to create value, there are so many different opportunities to go out in the world and find your place and create value as a CPA. So,
and I would add to that this is who House Bill 148 was created for, as well as new students. It's to pull in some of the people that ruled it out initially because that 5th year was either too expensive or too onerous to get. And so I think without a doubt, backtracking is okay. I talked to somebody this morning that has been in the workforce for 6 years, and they had actually passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam, had taken all their accounting. They were an undergrad accounting major out of University of Alabama, which I didn't say anything about Alabama, but
he's a Georgia fan, folks.
That's right.
So.
But
Go Dogs.
Without a doubt, I told him, I said, look, this was made for you, and you already did everything you need. So work on the experience requirement, but you passed all 4 parts. You got the education requirement nailed down. This is why we did House Bill 148.
And Don's right. Anecdotally, I've got more than a handful of individual student stories where one in particular was, I was getting my finance degree, and now he's double majoring.
Right.
One where they were actually several where they were in other majors, and with that passage of House Bill 148, they actually flipped back to accounting.
Right.
So this is it's definitely happening. But my advice would be pursue it, because it just leads to an enormous amount of opportunities. All right. How are we on questions? We're good. All right. So we can wrap this up.
Absolutely.
House Bill 148 happened so quickly.
It did.
It kind of felt easy. And the real story is that it wasn't. It was years of listening. It was years of idea exchange. It was years of sometimes lots of disagreement, across the country, in between organizations and things like that. But at the end of the day, the profession coalesced together. Our members coalesced together. And with an effective legislative team that we have, we got it across the finish line. But as much as it looked easy, it is never easy, right? The thought leadership's never easy. The politics are never easy.
And even in the unanimous votes, I mean, it sounds like it was easy at the State House, and it wasn't always easy. I will share, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, give a tip of the cap to our 3 CPA legislators that made this happen. Chairman John Carson out of our House, he was the bill sponsor.
Yep.
Representative David Wilkerson, obviously they were big parts on the passage of this bill through the House. And the fact that we have a Democrat and a Republican in the House helped coalesce both parties on it. Once it reached the Senate, Senator Billy Hickman was a huge help in getting this bill passed as well. So without those 3 guys, I mean, it would have been a tougher road. And we ran into debate, behind the scenes that people don't know about, that it does wind up being bumps in the road. So it looked easy. I'm glad we could make it look easy. But work still went into it for sure.
I say this, if you are thrilled with House Bill 148, you can thank us. If you are terribly unhappy with it, then you can blame us. That's right.
That's right.
That's where we're at. Any last words?
I think that's it. Just, I love my job. Thank you for letting me do this, and reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you for being members. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for allowing us to do what we do for you. We do not take it for granted. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.